Hello, good morning, and welcome to all the participants to our second day of the Cabana Knowledge Exchange meeting. My name is Jessica Carcaño. I'm a research assistant at Langevio, and I will be your host today. To start with the program of food security meeting, I would like to present the members of the Presidium panel. Dr. Gabriel Lopez, Academic Secretary of CIMBESTAF. Doctora Laila Partida Martínez, Director of CIMBESTAF Unit Irapuato. Dr. Sol Ortiz Garcia, General Director of Prospection Policy and Climate Change. Dr. Marta Espinosa Cantellano, Planning Secretary of CIMBESTAF. Dr. Marco Cristancho, leader of the Cabana Latin America. And Dr. Alfredo Herrera Estrella, PI of Cabana, Mexico. Okay, so we are ready to receive some welcome words from Dr. Gabriel Lopez Castro.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. Many thanks to the organizers of this meeting of the Cabana Consortium for the kind invitation to address a few welcome words. I am a theoretical particle physics, and probably my only connection with food is that I work in flavor physics, the last step of the chain of food production, of course. So to be very brief and to be more precise about what I want to say, let me read a few words I have written for this occasion. Let me tell you a very brief story. I was born in a small poor town in the state of Oaxaca at the south of Mexico. The small farmers did not use any technology at all and calculated the arrival of the rainy season and played with luck and the phases of the moon to plant corn and beans. Production was only for self-consumption, and the excess, if any, was sold or exchanged with other people, with other foods. Today, this way of production has practically disappeared. And those who survive and are dedicated to something else and depend on food from outside. Their eating habits have changed completely, and they have become poorer and depend on state aid and services. At least for me, this is my personal reason of why technology and science is very important for food security and also for food production. Well, on behalf of CIMBESTAF and of the National Laboratory of Genetics and Biodiversity, Langevio in Spanish, it is a pleasure to welcome all of you to this second day of the meeting, this time with sessions on food security. As you probably know, Langevio started activities in 2005 with the goal of investigating the sequencing and functional analysis of diverse species of plants, as well as their possible applications. Currently, it is one of CIMBESTAF's flagship centers that, among other achievements, has sequenced the genome of several species, including corn, avocado, and common bean, among other species of great food importance in the country. As also is well known, the problem of achieving food sufficiency and security has many factors, ranging from soil quality, biodiversity, growing of global population to climate change. In several of these stages, scientists from countries like ours can contribute in many ways through research, taking into account our own diversity and food production characteristics. Sharing experiences and joining efforts through collaboration is extremely important for us, especially because the resources and infrastructure available in each country are limited, but can be complementary. I think this is the strongest point of collaboration. Given the lack of resources, this is probably the only way to embark into more ambitious projects than working in isolation, everyone in every country. I hope that this Cabana meeting will stimulate to start new collaborations and reinforce the community dedicated to bioinformatics in our institutions. We are in the era of genomics, and several of our biology departments as in the staff have expressed their interest to count on experts that develop methods and software tools to deal with large amounts of biological data. Well, again, welcome to this forum on food security. Welcome to SIMBE staff. I enjoy a successful meeting. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to have been invited to listen to this very interesting session of Cabana, bringing out the results of these very well-known researchers in the theme of food security. Food security being one of the most important sustainable development goals of the United Nations, where so many countries, 198, came together and decided to bring forward the importance of 17 sustainable development goals, and number 2 is zero hunger. And here comes the theme of today, which is food security. I believe, like in the United Nations, when all these countries came together to make a compromise of bringing forward, of working towards these goals, so the scientific community is now coming forward. Without collaboration, we cannot achieve this very important goal. And food security is one of the main themes that has to do with zero hunger, and zero hunger is at the same time a very important mean of attending the other 16 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So I am very happy to see how collaboration, especially here now within Latin America, with the help of our friends in the United Kingdom, are bringing us together to work towards this important subject. So I just want to thank all the organizers. I want to thank Cabana. I wanted to acknowledge this great effort in doing not only this work today. The work today is the result of much collaboration, much work that has been done, but how we can plan for the future. So have a great, successful meeting. I will be eager to listen to your presentations. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your words, Dr. Marta Espinosa Cantillano. And now let's hear what Dr. Kat Brooksban has to say. I think she's virtually. No. She will be like, no.
I'm here. I'm here.
Uh,
Thank you.
Dr. Kat Brooksbank, she's the Cabana leader. So, oh, she's there.
Can you hear me? I think you can hear me. I hope you can hear me anyway. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to say a few words this morning. I understand that the audience is quite a different audience from yesterday. For those of you who were with us yesterday, apologies, because some of what I'm going to say will not be news to you. But in the interests of full disclosure and in the interests of transparency, I feel I owe this audience an explanation as to why I'm not in the room with you. I have a small electrical problem with my heart, and I've been advised against long-haul travel. And that is the only reason why I'm not there in the room physically with you all. And it saddens me greatly that I can't be there physically. However, yesterday I managed to stay to the very end of the working day. I'm very sad that I missed dinner, but such is life. And today I have every intention of doing the same thing. So I'll be here virtually and trying to join in the discussions as much as I possibly can. I'd like to say a really big thank you again to Alfredo, to Seleni, and to their colleagues, to all of the members of the Presidium. Yesterday's meeting was fantastic. I have every expectation that today's meeting will be just as fantastic. And I would also like to thank them again for their incredible contributions to the Cabana project throughout its 4.5 years. I would also like to thank our funders, UKRI and the Global Challenges Research Fund, which they manage, for making this project possible. It has been a very, very special project for everybody involved. As you're aware, it's put together a pan-Latin American network of very competent, data-driven biologists who can both perform research at the highest international level and can also train others to do the same. And this is where the capacity strengthening comes into Cabana. There have been times throughout the past 4.5 years when I and perhaps others have thought that maybe we were a little bit naive and a little bit overambitious trying to tackle infectious diseases and food security and protection of biodiversity in one project, and furthermore trying to do this not just in collaboration with one country but with an entire continent. However, I think the strength of Cabana lies in the fact that we did have that ambition and we did have that naivety, because the impacts of Cabana have been quite far-reaching, and we certainly saw some of that yesterday, sorry. And I'm sure we will see more of it today. I'm also, as I said yesterday, very keen to ensure that this week, which is formally the final week of Cabana, is not actually the final week of Cabana, but the beginnings of Cabana Phase 2, and I hope we'll take many of you with us. And with that, I would simply like to thank you, to wish you an inspirational and enjoyable time at this meeting. I look forward to further discussions with you throughout the day, and may the proceedings begin. Thank you very, very much for your attention.
Thanks for your words, Dr. Kat. So now let's hear some inaugural words from Dr. Sol Ortiz Garcia. She is the General Director of Prospection, Policy and Climate Change.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor for me to be here representing Secretary of Agriculture and Rural Development, Dr. Victor Villalobos. Secretary Villalobos sends you a warm greeting and thanks for the invitation to participate in this very important meeting on food security and knowledge exchange. From a personal perspective, I also have to say that I'm very happy to be here and see colleagues and professors that I haven't seen for a while and that are very dear to me. I would like to emphasize the importance of this event through Cabana's initiative, through Cabana's initiative 6 in its and it's implied in its name, to strengthen capacity building for bioinformatics in Latin America. Why Latin America is such an important region for this endeavor? In 1998, Conservation International identified 17 megadiverse countries. You all know that megadiverse means great diversity, but probably not all know that the main criteria for megadiverse country is to have endemisms at the level of species, genera, and families. These 17 megadiverse countries are located in or partially in tropical and subtropical regions. Latin America has 7 of these 17 countries, making the region with the largest number of megadiverse countries. And not just that, Latin America as a megadiverse region has around 60% of the diversity of the planet, biological diversity that is not found in any other region of the world. Latin America also has 3 centers of origin for cultivated plants: Mesoamerican Center, the Andean region, and the Amazon. The genetic and cultural characteristics that this region keep represent a legacy for our ancestors and for our generations. So we have the great responsibility to preserve this agrobiodiversity, and the contributions of this region with the diversity of crops to the world include maize, potatoes, beans, tomatoes, all these very important crops that among many others we need to preserve and acknowledge. One of the main reasons to integrate and increase the knowledge and characterize the genetic diversity for food and agriculture is that the possibility to obtain varieties that are adapted to changing conditions that we are facing now because of climate change. This climate change is one of the greatest challenges for humanity. And we know that the use of sustainable diversity can help us tackle it. Allow me now to recall that in 1953, Watson and Crick proposed the double helix models to explain the structure of DNA. At that time, they did not imagine the amount of information that will begin to be generated and that has been still being generated, and that is now growing exponentially. It has been 17 years since that discovery, and indeed, the amount of information accumulated is now only possible to be stored and analyzed by the computational advances and that are increasing in its capacity day by day. It is clear now the importance of big data and all the data that can be stored and analyzed, and how can this drive research for sustainable food production and the protection of biodiversity. As we know, the use of sustainable diversity is one of the best ways to conserve it. Latin America is one of the regions with the highest net food production as well. This underlines the great relevance that the region has for promoting coordinated efforts among Latin American countries for sustainable food production. Scientific exchange and training, as well as building capacity across the borders in Latin America, is more relevant than ever. So we kindly recall donors to contribute to Latin American science and research that will benefit not only the region, but also our planet. With these brief words, I will proceed now to formally open the Food Security Knowledge Exchange meeting. I don't know what is the tradition, if you want to stand up or not, but okay, if you do. Now we declare officially open this meeting at 9:30 in the morning. And thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you for your words, Dr. Sol Ortiz. If all the Presidium panel members want to take a seat, if you can be more comfortable, and thanks to all of you for being here. Okay, so let's start with our meeting. The first session, it's called Soil Preservation and Microbiome, and it will be presented by Dr. Luis Herrera Estrella. Welcome.
Good morning. I will have the pleasure to chair the session of this morning on soil preservation and microbiome. And our first lecture is going to be presented by Dr. Sol Ortiz Garcia, that has a very long title, Director General of Prospection Policy and Climate Change of the Secretary of Agriculture, and she'll be presenting a conference on the National Soil Strategy for Sustainable Agriculture, a policy instrument. Sol, where are you? She's just getting ready for her talk. Sorry.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you. I will present here on the table because I do need to see my slides, and I hope you can hear me clearly. Well, once more, thank you very much for the invitation, and good morning to everybody. Let me put the microphone package here. Okay. And thank you for the kind invitation and the opportunity to present one of the main policy instruments that our secretary instructed us to construct and implement. And it is now in the implementation phase. So this National Soil Strategy for Sustainable Agriculture is this policy instrument. We call it in short ENASAS, and is one of the main guiding documents of this administration regarding to soil and its management. And let me just start by mentioning some of the main context, national context about agricultural soils. Mexico has more than 200 million hectares. Of this, 1.9 approximately million hectares, the 54.5%, are pasture lands. And 12%, this is 24 million hectares, are arable lands. Of those, in average, 21 million hectares are crop cultivated every year. We have a total population of around 127 million. And if we think on the amount of land or the surface of land that we can crop for this amount of people, we have arable per capita arable land of approximately 0.19 hectares. You can see that this amount of arable land for per capita, it's going to be decreasing as the population grows. In this national context, I also want to refer to what are the main threats for soil in our country. And soil degradation in Mexico reaches around, it's a little bit more than 60%. Our soils have a degree of degradation, different degrees, mostly moderate, but there are also an increase in the amount of soil that has severe or extreme degradation. Some of the main threats are listed here. Erosion by wind and water is one of the main problems for soils in Mexico, but also the loss of biodiversity is a big concern. And this is a big concern because biodiversity is a key issue to maintain soil function. Within our activities in the Secretary, Dr. Villalobos recognized the main importance of soil and water for sustainable agriculture. The efficient use of water is a key issue. As you all know, many of the main problems right now in Mexico are due to drought and lack of water availability. And the other main issue is also how are we managing our soils. Within our sectoral program for agricultural and rural development, we have three main pillars: productivity, sustainability, and inclusiveness. We are trying not to leave anybody behind, and these three pillars will contribute to self-sufficiency of food security. And as has been said during the previous words, our sectoral program tries to contribute to the different sustainable development goals, in particular the ones that you're seeing on the screen. But as we know, these 17 goals are very tied together. So we hope that by contributing to these ones, we can contribute to the whole development of the 2030 agenda. And I want to emphasize on this third main objective in relation to sustainable production practices in the agricultural and aquacultural fishing sector. This is the main, a view of a wide view of agriculture that is not just including cropping, but also livestock production. And this main objective tries to do this sustainable production considering the agroclimatic risk that we are facing. So we have these two main priority strategies. I'm not going to go to all the text that you can read there. It is published in the official journal for Mexico. But I want to emphasize that many of the activities that are being established in this program are related to the conservation and restoration of soils, and also to promote soil conservation and restoration practices to improve soil fertility, which is one of the main problems for soil in agriculture. We also want to increase the use of organic matter, which is also one of the problems in soil in Mexico. And why not to include in these practices the use of microorganisms that have the potential to contribute to soil fertility and soil functions. We also are recognizing the key role that soils have for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and for capturing carbon. I'm going to talk a bit more ahead on this. This national strategy for national soil strategy for sustainable agriculture was presented by the Secretary last December in the celebration of the Soil Global Day. And it had a long story, let's say, because it was announced in December 2020, and it took us almost a year to put together this document. And you can see on the screen all the different institutions that contributed to the work of the strategy. Oops. And the main objective of the ENASAS is to promote, strengthen, and coordinate actions to increase the sustainable management of agricultural soils in our national territory. This recognizing that soil management can contribute to food security and well-being. Also, that the way to do it is by conserving the multiple functions that soil has, including looking forward for restore the degraded agricultural soils. So ENASAS also promote education and social awareness about the importance of soil for life, and with the participation of multiple stakeholders, particularly recognizing the importance of local actors among these farmers. So we want to promote the generation and integration of not just scientific knowledge, but also traditional knowledge that has proved to work, and to promote between these synergies, the technological innovations that can be adapted to different socio-ecological contexts, recognizing that Mexico is very diverse, not just in biological diversity, but also in productive systems. So the strategy that I want to briefly present to you has 7 main strategic axes. You can read them here, and this axis we want that these axes contribute to soil governance in general. As I mentioned, we had the support of an advisor group, and now the strategy in one of its axes, the coordination and cooperation axis, number 6, is stating to generate what we call Consejo Consultivo, an advisory council that will be a sectorial group that will help us to the implementation of the strategy. The strategy, I will go back, has 30 lines of action, and right now has 169 actual activities, which are a lot of activities, and we recognize the strategy is very ambitious, but we actually think that many of these can be achieved if we all work together. So I share with our colleagues the naivety and the ambitiousness that we have with this strategy. And I will just highlight some of the specific actions that the ENASAS have in relation to soil biodiversity. One of these is states that we need to promote sustainable soil use through an agroecological approach that contributes to conserving biodiversity, the health of soil and soil functions, as well as productivity. All other action emphasize that we need to prevent and minimize the presence of chemical and biological contaminants in agricultural soils and promote the substitution of dangerous pesticides with techniques and practices that conserve soil biodiversity. And I think that this is a very good opportunity to include many of the biodiversity that can contribute to these functions of soil. Also, we want to promote bioremediation methods and technologies for degraded soil and those in the process of recovery. Also focusing on each type of degradation. Each type will have different practices and emphasizing the recovery of biological diversity in soils. Other actions specifically related to biodiversity include not just the use of biodiversity, but to know where, how is biodiversity distributed in soils in terms of their vulnerability. We also need to structure and integrate soil and biodiversity monitoring databases, and this is very important for what I think it's been discussed or it's going to be discussed. And we need to harmonize these databases with the global references that exist. Also, it's very important to promote among society, in particularly with farmers, not that not all of them don't know it, but some of them have a little bit, I think, forgotten the relevance of soil biodiversity for agriculture. So these are some of the main specifications of the ENASAS for biodiversity. And let me also mention that this strategy has been constructed considering many other documents that have been also developed by the FAO within the framework of the Global Soil Partnership, which Mexico is part of it, and include not just issues with soil management, but also with soil analysis. How can we recarbonize our soils? This program of soil doctors that I will talk about a little bit. So we know that biodiversity is key for soil functions. It supports nutrient cycling, plant growth, and productivity. Soil biodiversity also enhances water retention and purification, improves resilience against pests and diseases, and contributes to remediate soil pollution. Biodiversity is a very important part of soil and improves its structure. It is a source of medicines and supports human health, helps to mitigate and adapt to climate change, and maintains and restore ecosystems. So biodiversity in soils is a key issue that we have to consider and work with. But we also know that there are many obstacles to create a global biodiversity monitoring network. Is not easy. We still have lots of blind spots in global soil diversity and the relation that this diversity has with different ecosystem functions. Some of the obstacles that has been identified by Guerra et al. In its paper from 2020 are legal issues regarding the transport and sharing of soil samples and biological data that we need to foster somehow. They also recognize scattered literature and lack of mobilization and systematization of local studies. The information of soil biodiversity in the world is very heterogeneous. There are places that has been very studied, but others that are lacking this, and Latin America, unfortunately, is one of these regions. So there's also the lack of temporary explicit information on soil biodiversity and its functions. I mentioned that. And with the ENASAS, we are trying to tackle this obstacle, and the lack of globally distributed expertise, research funding, and infrastructure. So these are main obstacles for improving our biodiversity monitoring network. Also, crop microbiome and sustainable agriculture are really very important issues to consider in for the assessment and the structure and function of the microbiome. We need the development of effective and rationally designed microbiome technologies for sustainable agriculture. And we have to acknowledge that the key ecological and evolutionary interactions between plant species and the microbiomes can be harnessed and can contribute to increase agriculture productivity. So this could be done by stimulation of nutrient cycling, mycorrhizal fungi, symbiotic nitrogen fixing bacteria, and phosphorus solubilizing microorganisms. And this will also contribute to tackle this sustainable development goal that was mentioned, zero hunger. There's within the strategy, the ENASAS, we have, as I mentioned, recognized other efforts that have been developed and that can be applied in different regions of the world. And I'm very happy to share with you that the Soil Doctors program from FAO has been applying its pilot phase in Mexico as the first country to implement this program. And the main actor here is the PUES, the Programa Universitario de Estudios Interdisciplinarios del Suelo. I will say it in Spanish and let you with the translation for later. But this program from UNAM has been key, and we have been partnership with the PUES and the Ministry of Agriculture to implement this program that consists in capacity building for farmers, so farmers can become doctors, soil doctors, and share their knowledge with other farmers. The other main activity that we are organizing is in relation to soil recarbonization. As you know, soil organic carbon is a key property for soil functions, and also it provides habitat for soil biodiversity. So the soil recarbonization can help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as I mentioned, and can contribute also to the adaptation of agriculture, because many of the practices related to carbon capture also improve the soil qualities. And we have sent a conceptual note to the Green Climate Fund for the recarbonization of soils in Mexico. This conceptual note has been approved, and the project is going to be implemented with the Ministry of Agriculture and FAO in Mexico. There are other programs complementary to the ENASAS. One, it's within the Secretary, we have this committee of genetic resources for food and agriculture, and one of the subcommittees is on relation to microbial and invertebrate genetic resources that we consider can contribute also to the knowledge and improvement of soil functions. This committee is coordinated by the INIFAP. And we also are starting this other program that is called Fíjate N2, which promotes research, technological development, and transfer of bio inputs for the nutrition and agricultural crops. And this is going to be very important, particularly in these moments where chemical fertilizers are increasing in prices and not clearly available. These are the three main components of this program: technological development, biological effectiveness checking for the bio fertilizers, and technology transfers from university farmers field schools to farmers. And finally, let me just share some results that we got recently from a participatory consultations in relation to the ENASAS. We sent two different quizzes, one for producers, women and men, farmers, and technical assistants. We received almost 5,000 responses for all 32 states. And we also get a long quiz or interview for key stakeholders. This one has the purpose to identify how can different stakeholders contribute to the implementation of the ENASAS. And for this longer quest, we received 362 responses from the public and private institutions, and including 43 universities. And I cannot go in details to the results of this quest, but the main extreme climatic phenomena identified by farmers and by key stakeholders were drought and temperature increase, which is perfectly obvious in relation to what the country is facing with climate change. And the main problems that farmers identified, which also were in agreement with what the stakeholders identified, were lack of nutrients and erosion. So there's a lot of work to do in these activities to tackle these problems. So as a way to conclude, I will like to mention that we know that food security depends on the health of agricultural soils, and the health of agricultural soils depends on biodiversity. It is essential to value the soil and its biodiversity as a fundamental resource for agriculture. It is necessary to establish coordinated actions among the government, researchers, agricultural producers, the private sectors, to face the challenges of conserving agricultural soils and reversing degradation processes. And I think this exercise that we're having today, it's part of this looking for coordinating actions. We also need to improve the knowledge of soil biodiversity and the relation that this biodiversity has with different ecosystem functions. And we have to monitor in a systematic way and sampling soil biodiversity, also improving databases, and with this improve also decision making, not just for decision makers in government, but also for farmers. And finally, I think it's necessary to strengthen the link between the academic sector and the government for the development of viable and short-term alternatives for different practices on sustainable soil management. I think that's the last one. Thank you very much for your attention.
We have a few minutes for questions. If you have any questions for Dr. Ortiz. Laila.
Thank you very much. I think, well, I agree with you in everything what you have said, and this program, I think, is very important. I wonder if we would be able, from Mexico, to really commit resources to this research in the long term, because I have seen, well, the ideas are very good, but of course, if we don't have long-term goals and also resources. I was reading some other aspects of climatic change, and some people think, I think that 2% of the general national gross product should be invested in all these kind of activities to really prevent climatic change. So I was wondering if you have an idea how much the government can really do and plan for the next, not only 3 years, but probably 10 years or even 20, that we will really reach these goals that we are aiming, and we are really aware that this is a big problem. So of course, I would like to see how we could contribute, that we can keep a goal-term plan, and also to put all together the resources, the talent, and of course the academic community, I think, is very willing to do that. So thank you.
Should I respond? Try to.
That's a difficult question.
It's a kind of difficult question, but let me start a little bit with bad news. In terms of preventing climate change, I'm afraid to say that IPCC and many other intergovernmental panels with scientific basis say that that train has gone. We cannot prevent any more climate change. It's here. And if we do all the things that we have to do and reach the goal in the Paris Agreement of not going over 1.5 centigrade, still there's the need to adapt. So I think that agriculture in that way has a very important role to play, not just because agriculture is very vulnerable to all the extreme weather effects of climate change, but also because agriculture, not being the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, can contribute to reduce the emission. So I wish I could say, oh yes, if we do this and that, we will prevent climate change. No, we are doing all these things, trying mostly to adapt and reduce the effects. But unfortunately, it's not going to be easy. In terms of resources, the news are not that good either. Unfortunately, I think that there's no clear vision yet on the importance of climate change. I have to say it. And I wouldn't justify it, but at least I will say that with the pandemic, many of the resources that might have gone to other kinds of research and commitments went to deal with the pandemic. So how can we assure resources in the long term? One way that we have been doing it is associating with agencies of the different organizations in the United Nations, for example, is one, and I give this example on the project for soil recarbonization in Mexico, with this view of integrating not just the soil management practices, but also biodiversity and how this can contribute to reduce greenhouse gas emission and to adapt to the changing conditions. So these resources in United Nations agencies are not for very long term, but let's say they go through administrations. So it's not like it's going to be finished in 2024 and we're done. So that is one way to do it. And another, I think it's really, let's say, put some of the, I don't want to say conditioning or putting, you know, locks for how do you give money for different programs. But that is something that we are considering. Is hard in programs right now for the government, the programs, for example, for production for well-being, because it's hard to say to the farmers, if you don't do this or that, we won't give you the incentives. But what we are trying now is to look for credits for farmers that can start this transition to have better practices. And one mechanism that will go not for a very, very long term, but for a term that I think it's going to be good for farmers is this carbon credits. So if you do good practices and you can prove that you are capturing carbon, you can sell those carbon credits. And that is a mechanism that we are exploring and we are trying to promote, because it won't depend directly from the government, but it will be managed among private sector and farmers. So I hope I give you some hope in this situation, but as I said, resources are very limited, and what we are also trying to foster is collaboration, synergies, and how can we, with what we have, contribute to face these challenges. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we thank Dr. Ortiz for this very nice presentation.